Hello, welcome to mini lecture number, number 7. And we are now going to continue with introductory material to part 3 of your textbook. We've already talked about part 1, which was building the practitioner's path. Part 2, supporting the practitioner's path. And now we are starting part 3 of the book, which has to do with following the practitioner's path. And really, with part 3 of the textbook, we are going to be talking about a lot of the aspects of your observations, because these are the stepping stones and the guideposts, and it gets us thinking about what it means to be a professional in any profession. What is a professional, and how is a profession actually defined? Professions have become an essential component of our lives, and professions are held responsible and accountable for the workings of numerous systems within our society. There are many professions that have to be licensed in various states, and we know that speech-language pathology is a licensed profession in New York State, as is audiology. Education, on the other hand, and teaching is a certification. It's not an area of licensure. So we do have to be licensed, and we are considered a profession. And what does that really mean? Well, it means that there are core elements of every profession, and there has to be some evidence of mastery of a complex body of knowledge and skills used in service to others. And every profession has a complex set of principles. But let's think about our profession and what are the guideposts that direct and focus our thinking along our travels on the practitioner's path. So this part of the book contains 5 chapters, and each chapter can be thought of as a kind of a stepping stone. And we're going to stop along the way and examine each one thoroughly. And they will help us with the development of what we call a professional attitude. And this is going to be, these will be exemplified through various narratives in the textbook. And these are kind of professional pillars of practice. If part 2 was about philosophical pillars of practice, then this is about the professional pillars of practice, such as our ability to study different maps. Well, what exactly are we talking about? Well, we're talking about a lot of different philosophical theories and frameworks that come from many different fields. It comes from education, it comes from social work, comes from psychology. You learn about many of these in your various courses. In the chapter about studying different maps, we're going to learn about systems theory and how important systems theory is when you work within any kind of medical or educational structure. We're also going to talk about different types of learning. Some of this, hopefully, you will already know about from your education classes. Some of the learning theories that drives the work that we do, behaviorism and psycholinguistics and social constructivism, and this all provides the basis of our therapeutic work. And then we're going to also talk a little bit about instructional design, because instructional design and even some of the concepts that's used in information technology can be adapted for our therapy programs, whether or not we work with technology, and most of us do. And then there's another chapter in this section about implementing materials and activities, and we're going to spend a lot of time on this and talk about the differences between materials and activities, and what play is and how important play is. And then we'll go through material selection. We'll talk about things that we don't really get much training in usually in our field, unlike occupational therapy and physical therapy. So we're going to talk about some of that, things like critical activity features, and then we'll talk about material cautions, things that you have to be careful about, and the importance of using visual learning materials, principles of gamification, and of course, a few words about digital media. And then another one of the chapters and the areas that we're going to cover is measuring progress, and you will observe a lot of this in the actual sessions that you're watching. We're going to talk about the process of assessment and what it means to be SMART, which is an acronym that you may or may not know about. We'll talk about the power of observation. That was in one of my earlier lectures, and you can go through some of that, and the importance of being mindful of observational snapshots and the different lenses, the different lenses that we have that we view the situation through. Then we'll talk about data collection and our relationship with evidence, and how what we do really can be seen as a type of scientific activity. We'll talk about quantitative measurements as well as qualitative measurements. And measuring outcomes, which is one of the most important things that we do with our work. So that takes us to accountability and being able to track clinically significant change. We'll talk also about measuring outcomes through language demands of the curriculum and using checklists and protocols, etc. And then in the next chapter, still another one of the guideposts, incorporating good and best practices. We'll talk about what good practices are, some of the best practices that we talk about that we all aspire toward. For example, naturalistic, meaning everyday activities and strategies that are very functional. We'll talk about the importance of reciprocal or reciprocity, meaning joint partnerships and turn taking, and a little bit about the social medical model. Another best practice that we'll discuss will be curriculum related, and talking about what curriculum is, what the standards are, what are our feelings about them. How do we feel about teaching, working within classroom curriculum, and how are we able to view ourselves and our roles within that structure. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the importance of an inclusive approach, which gets into things like implicit bias and discrimination training and cultural competence, and everything that's related to that. And the last chapter, a part of part 3, is the very importance of working in community. And with that, what person-centered care is, what do we mean when we talk about the Therapeutic Alliance. We're going to do a solid review of collaboration and teamwork, including why we collaborate, why we have to collaborate, and also why collaboration is so very difficult at times. And then we'll finish up the chapter by talking about boundaries, power differentials, tutors, and warning signals that sometimes flash in our work that hopefully we pay attention to, sometimes we don't. Okay? And that will be part 3. Thank you.